welcome to the first episode of Young Man's Game. My name's Joaquin Gage. I'm alongside Kent Tilley. We're just going to talk about that transition that we make from different careers today. And Kent's got a very interesting story that I'm sure you're going to enjoy, and I'm going to get a lot of fun learning a little bit more about Kent. So, Kent, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me in my own condo. I'm happy to be here. What are we talking about?
Well, what are we talking about? What we're going to do is, usually when, if we look back in time, we've seen guys or people, young men and women with their careers, they've started in one profession and kind of stayed in that profession until retirement. And we're seeing a lot more in these days where people are considering multiple types of careers. So I know that you had a major change in your career at one point. Why don't you tell us about how you, after college, after university, what was your first passion?
What was my first passion? I don't know if I've ever found my passion. One thing I love to do, that's kind of a big part of my story, is stand-up comedy. So I'm, amateur / half professional stand-up comedian. Like, I get paid a little bit of money to tell jokes on stage, but I'm certainly not at a level where you'd be like, oh my goodness, that guy's amazing. Like, he's not selling things out. I get paid really poorly to tell mediocre jokes. That's part of my story for sure. A big part of the transition that I made, which is really weird. I think it's interesting coming from you, because you would have had to make a way bigger transition than me. Somebody coming out of professional sports into a new career. You probably haven't taken a college degree. You've never had an even part-time job because your job is sports, right? So I would be more interested in hearing about you than you.
I can see why you'd probably want to hear more about me.
So maybe in episode 2 we'll flip the script here, because now I'm curious. My first I don't know. I mean, I love woodworking. I was a carpenter for many years in my 20s. I bounced from a lot of jobs. I went back and forth to school a number of times. I went traveling. I was sort of of the lucky cohort of people I'm like the oldest millennial, basically, and the youngest son of, the first boomers. My dad was a physician. I was lucky enough that now they had some money. It was a little bit easier to be like, well, he can kind of do what he wants, and whatever. My dad, education, traveling for education was amazing. So I went to Australia 1 year on my mom and dad's dime, because my dad said that was a great education. And I always joke, what I learned in those 90 days in Australia was that I could drink for 74 of the 90. And,
Is that because of the lower hemisphere?
No, I don't know. I was it's well, you got to take off 1 day every week, basically. There needs to be a recuperation day. So the education part of that trip wasn't huge. That was right out of high school. Coming from a son of a physician, there's a bit of a pressure. Where my mom, her dad was a dentist. My mom was very serious about making, a professional career and having steady income, because my dad always had this steady income as a physician. And I liked that idea, but I also didn't like the idea of going to school for a decade, And my dad talked about how hard it was and how stressful the job was, and eventually, I believe, the stress killed him in his late 50s. He had to retire the day he got sick. He never took a sick day in his career. All of these things where you say, okay, well, maybe that's not worth it in life. And there was a little bit of an artsy side of me. I wanted to be a travel writer after I went to Australia. My mom was like, there's no money in writing. So I was like, okay, we'll go back into engineering. I went into civil engineering after I failed out of like university level engineering. I had no idea how to study. I didn't do homework in high school, so I was like, all I need to do is the bare minimum to get the grades I need to get to be able to get into sciences so I can be a doctor later. I'll start trying in my bachelor's degree. But then I went into engineering and was like, you have 6 classes a day and labs, and I was like, my mind is blown, right? My uncle was an engineer and owned a very successful firm in Edmonton, so it seemed like a good fit, I guess. But really didn't enjoy it. And then went back to Nate to go back and just get that education, but ended up, after my first year there, was like, this isn't what I want. So I went back, I framed houses for a few years with some buddies, learned carpentry, loved it. Loved building things, absolutely still think it's a skill everybody should have as some sort of trade, understanding what's going on in your house. Really good, honest work. You feel great at the end of the day. You just very hard to do for the remainder of your life, but loved it and still love building decks and doing projects at home and whatever. So I went back to engineering to finally finish. It was like near my 26, 27. Had never made any money really in my life yet. Working. My buddy that was running the framing crew, he was balling. He had a Rolex and a dirt bike and a house. And that was boom times, right? Like my friends were making money, but I was not making anything. And but enjoying my life. I still lived in my parents' basement. My dad got sick when I was in school. I never even finished it. It was the boom. So I applied for a job as like an estimator coming out, like after the year was done. I had one class that I never went to because I couldn't get out of bed. I was depressed. And I was like, the guy was like, just hand it in, I'll pass you. And I couldn't even do that. So I still don't even have my civil engineering diploma. But I got this job. Called the quantity surveyor. Never even heard of it. It's a big job in like the UK and Africa, and that's where a lot of people come over. It's more of a professional designation there, but basically I used to tell people, let's say you wanted to build a project. We're in a condo building right now, and so you go to the bank and you say, I want to build this condo building. It's going to cost me $8 million to build this. Will you give me a loan for the money? And then the bank would say, well, we kind of want to, but we don't know that much about buildings, so we're going to make you hire this company to make sure your budget is in line. And then we would go out every month when they wanted to do a draw on their mortgage, and we would be like, okay. And I didn't know what the hell I was talking about, right? Like, it would be like, they would be like, this month we spent $575,000 on drywall. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to know how much money they spent on drywall this month, right? Like, but I would go around with my camera and I'd take pictures and I'd be like, yep, it seems like it's coming along, so give them their money. Because in the boom, easiest job in the world. The banks are like, make sure they get their money because it's going to be worth more right away. They're always going to pay everybody back. Worked there for quite a while, 3 years sort of in total. I still was bouncing around jobs, but this one was the big one for me. I had 2 bosses, and then there was basically 3 of us working at this company that were all my age, and we were all friends, and then our bosses were like 10 years older than us. And they bought the company right before the boom, and they went from salaries of $44,000 to about $700,000 each in like a year, but they were still paying us like $50. And so we're in this like middle chunk doing all this work. We know we're doing all these reports for them, and they keep buying all this stuff, and they're so rich. And like, even though we'd go out for drinks, I'd tell my boss like every Friday, because he was an alky, and I was like, I don't want to work Friday, so I'd email him in the morning and be like, want to go for lunch? maybe have some drinks at lunch or whatever, and we would never go back to the office. And it worked really well, but I knew half the time he was going to make me pay. I'm like, you pay me $44,000 a year, and I know you're making that much every month. And you're making me fine, whatever. We took the afternoon off and you're paying me a salary. My other boss was just an Excel genius, and he was very brilliant with reports and how efficient we were, making sure they were right. So it was like we would go into Excel, we'd move these things, these numbers around, we'd put these pictures in, we'd do these reports. Like in an easy one, you could do it in an hour.
Yeah.
And we were charging $1,000.
Wow.
And so these guys are just like printing money in the boom, and then it slowed down at like '08 hit. Crazy. And Edmonton didn't get hit in the end very, very hard, but immediately they laid off one of my friends.
Okay.
And sorry, got a bit of a cold. So now there's two of us and the two bosses, and we went into them and we said, look, we know how much money you're paying him. What we each want is a $5,000 raise to take all of his work off your plate.
Makes sense.
So we each make $5,000 extra, and you guys profit an extra $20 each. You don't have to train anybody new. We believe we can do this. And they were like, no, we'll wait till Christmas time and we'll think about what kind of bonus we're going to pay you.
Okay.
So it was like, so my other friend quit.
And so this all came to you now?
I thought the three of us were eventually going to buy this business off of them or start our own. We were friends, we were getting good at the job, we were like, we got along, three bright guys in there that are like 30, you know, driven, whatever. Good career, you know, could have been great. These guys were making over $500,000 a year each, running a pretty easy, successful small business that most people wouldn't even know existed, right? And so now it's me in a giant office with two bosses doing all the work. Now they're taking on more, but they're not giving me more. And at the time they were paying me $50,000 a year. So they'd gotten pittance raises, you know, whatever. And no, this sucks. I don't have friends. I have two bosses. Like, they're my friends, but like, you it's not the same, right? So then they hire a guy that they had like brought in from somewhere in Africa. They had recruited him, and because they have this designation there, like a university degree, basically. So you're. And I always thought, okay, well, I need to get that, and I was going to. And, you know, whatever. You're obviously, you should make more money. But in this case, they paid him 3 times as much money as me, because I found out. And so what I did was, for the whole year, I tracked, and I said, how much work am I doing compared to him? And I would have billed out twice as much as him, done twice as much work as him, but made a third of what he made. And at this point, I didn't ask for a raise. I was like, I deserve one. They should give me one. Now I start shopping around. So I'm looking, and some of my best friends are now making pretty good money. Like, and the key factor in all of them is sales. And there's a stigma against sales at the time that I had felt, which I no longer feel. I think it's a terrible stigma. I think kids should be really taught sales training in class. Sales is such a big part of life. If you're good with people, you can be successful. Business owners love people going out and helping promote their products, and people are the best way to do that. And I think it's bad because you always you have, vacuum salesman, insurance salesman, car salesman, and you're like, they're greasy as hell, but like, a good salesman, and even an accountant or a physician or a lawyer, they're a salesperson too. They have to sell to their client that they're good enough at their job.
Yeah.
And so you never get taught this in life. You're just like, so I was kind of like, no, I don't want to be a sales guy. But the money, crazy, right? And I had met my wife, and we were trying to have a family. And we knew we wanted kids, but I was like, I literally can't afford our bills off of my salary and, her on mat leave.
Yeah.
Like, we actually have to take on debt to have a family. This sucks. I need more control of my destiny. And around the same time, I had started doing stand-up. And I had started stand-up because I had done a couple weddings where I got standing ovations at the wedding. So it's like, maybe I've got a knack for this or whatever. I always wanted to try it. And so one of the father-in-laws was like, I want to hire you for our office Christmas party. And you're going to do a comedy show. I'd never been hired to do a comedy show before. I definitely shouldn't have been hired to do a corporate Christmas party. I was like a month in, but I had no idea. And so they paid me $100 to go and sit at a table with people I now know and pretend I was going to be a new consultant with Investors Group.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about Investors Group other than my granddad had a consultant with Investors Group earlier, and we all had some accounts with this guy. That's all I knew. So I'm at this really nice Christmas party with good-looking people, all wearing suits, all wearing nice dresses, all look like they make money, everybody's having a good time, and I'm sitting there like, what is going on? And I'm like, I wonder what these people had to take in school to do this, right? Like, I'm like, they must all have a degree in something, whatever. I'm so sorry, I didn't think much of it. And I did this just bomb of a comedy show. Like, because anybody that's a comedian now would be like, you couldn't pay me enough to do what I did there, was go and pretend that I was a new consultant.
Oh, yeah.
And go up and like give a speech about how happy I was to be this new consultant, but make it funny and weird and awkward. And I only got paid $100 to do this. So I just shit the bed. Like, but this kind of like planted a seed in my head, but it's like, I kind of wonder what makes these people have these nice clothes at this nice Christmas party. I've never really seen any. Knowing what I know now later, it's like a lot of those people couldn't afford what they were wearing. Some of them were very, very well off, and others were like, yeah, you're lucky you're eating today, right? So now I'm searching for sales jobs, and I'm looking through, classifieds basically at this point in time, and one of them that comes up is like consultant wanted at Investors Group, and I was like, well, I certainly don't have the qualifications.
Yeah.
Right, like that couldn't be me, but I know this guy. So I called him and was like, I'd like to meet to talk to you about a possibility in this career. Now, knowing what I know now is anybody that presents themselves with a pulse to want to do this job is going to be hired. Anybody. Doesn't take, at this point in time where I was at that time, 11 years ago, in IG's culture and the culture in this business was like anybody that knows a human being should get this job, because now we have another person picking up the phone and calling their family and friends. The WFG's model, basically, now. IG wouldn't be they would be more picky now with who they're hiring. But that was the case then. And so I go and have drinks with this guy, not knowing that he's trying to recruit me because there's a financial incentive. I'm just trying to ask him if this would be a good fit. Sorry. And he sells me, and I'm an easy sell.
Me too.
And like my first year, I made 300-400 grand. I went on a free trip to China. Everything I've ever done is the greatest. Really good consultant. Still does extremely well. Very bright guy. Really good mentor at the end of the day for teaching me about financial planning. Very, very good. But I mean, a little Kool-Aid heavy sometimes with, like when I think back on what I know now. So I was like, unbelievable. And I didn't know anything about money at the time other than RSPs kind of existed for some reason. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm not ready. I'm not prepared for this job. So I went in and told my bosses, I was like, I quit. I'm going to try and control my destiny and be able to at least make what I'm worth. And he told me years later over drinks one time, one of my bosses, he's like, you were the best employee we've ever had. And that was out of like 11 of us over the years. And I was like, I was also the least paid employee you ever had. Yeah. It was unbelievable, right? So it's like, I liked the idea of controlling my destiny. My wife hated the idea of me starting from scratch. You're starting at a $0 role. You're not being paid anything. You know this. You've done it. It's terrifying. And I was like, well, hopefully I know enough people in the beginning that are going to be like, I think Kent might be smart enough to help me or whatever. But you don't know anything for 2 years. Like the first 6 months, I was like, what is happening? I had taken like a 3-day course down to Winnipeg for a few days. Now I'm supposed to talk to people about money and all their finances and all this stuff. And I was like, what do you, I don't know, what what do you mean? Answer all these questions, learning, fire hose, right? Taught me so much though. It was there for 5 years. Don't regret that 5 years at all. Got me to where I am today. I mean, that's a different story altogether. Is 5 years at IG, and then transitioning back down to zero to start my own firm. That was like the antithesis of everything that I hated about the industry that I'm in. I love the industry I'm in, and that transition was kind of neat because how I learned how to create my company now was based on what I learned at the quantity surveying company with that super efficient boss that was like creating reports and moving spreadsheets over and being like, if you can be efficient, you can give great customer service, charge less, and still give a product that is over and above what other people are offering. That's that was all based on that. So like they all sort of overlap. Yeah. Which I think would probably reign true in a lot of people's lives with their transition was led by some previous moment in their life where they used that as a skill. So now to anybody in their 20s that's like not sure about what they want to do in their life, I would say go and do everything.
Why not woodworking? You start your own financial firm. What made you
I don't like woodworking for money, and I hate the cold.
Okay, perfect.
In Edmonton, you can't work outside in the winter. And I wasn't good enough. I wasn't. Okay. I love it as a hobby. Yeah. It's the same thing. Comedy, for a moment. Wanted to try. And then learned how terrible that lifestyle is to go full bore into, unless you're very famous and can call your own shots. But in Canada, it's next to impossible. So, wanted to control my hours with family more than anything. and not die early like my dad did by working too hard. So, yeah.
Well, thanks, Kent. That was great. I learned a lot that I didn't know before. This is you're a man. You're an onion, a man of many layers. So.
Sorry, I mean you didn't. You interviewed. I want to interview you next. So.
Well, we can work on that. I'm also an onion, I think. But
I talk too much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our first episode. This has been enlightening, I think, with Kent's story. Stay tuned for episode 2, where I guess we're going to switch chairs and we'll find out a little bit about myself.